As a supporter, as an invigilator, I'm helping startups.
Where do you feel like we are standing as a startup ecosystem?
I think we need to educate more at grassroots level.
What is the difference between the startup, a conventional business, and entrepreneurship?
It's a discipline actually.
We always talk about like Amazon started from a garage.
Yeah, they didn't wait it for some investments or something. If you cannot communicate your idea in 30 seconds, so it means you're gonna fail.
Job at first before starting it up is a better choice, or right after the graduation.
It's all depends.
If you compare the success rates of both these cases together,
Only 20% of the startup succeeds.
so just to start it up at Talk That Matters, I think that is the first question that we usually ask, and that is about knowing ourselves. And I think that is where everything begins up. So the same question that goes at your end. So who is Mr. Shahwar? And I mean, like being in person. It's not about your designation. It's not about where you stand in your career-wise. It's about like who you are in person and where you want to go. What's your objectives? What is going in your life these days? And what do you want to achieve?
Right. Thank you so much, Ubaid, first of all, for inviting me to the TTM. Who is Shahwar? I think apart from my avatar, which I wear on daily basis as a program manager, so I'm a Piscean, proud husband and father of one, right? So, but beyond that, if I see myself, I come from a very humble background, right? From a family which basically you can say mediocres, right? So I started my journey. Then I completed my master's and graduation from Islamabad. Started my career back in 2005, right? So in initial years, if you ask me, I was like unaware of my choices, right? So as gradually Shahwar started career path and personal growth, then I started realizing that the startup ecosystem is the right fit for me actually, right? It was in my DNA. So now I see myself, if I look back, like 15 years back, if I see, so I find that that was a time when startup ecosystem was growing in Pakistan. Like it was the early days of startup ecosystem. So I feel blessed that I have been part of this ecosystem development, right? So if you say in a single word, who is Shahwar, right? So although I am into more kind of career path, not on a startup path, right? But I'm helping startups, right? So as a supporter, as a invigilator, so you can say that I've been part of that change which is happening, and currently in Faistabad, working on developing this ecosystem. And my mission and vision is that I'm looking down the road, 5 years, I will be starting my own startup. So few things are in plan and working on them with my colleagues and this stuff. So that's brief about myself, where I'm seeing myself in the next few years.
So you said like startup, being the startup facilitator was a part of your DNA, right?
Yeah.
So what really came from that, like from behind? What was the thing that really, came into your DNA in that way? Like you had already had a previous sort of a knowledge regarding the startup. So what, like, starting from the very starting point, what was the things that you already knew about, and what were the things you really wanted to bring into that startup ecosystem?
Yeah. So it was not like planned thing, you can say. I like started my career and jumped on this ship. And luckily that was the time back in 2008 when Pakistan startup ecosystem was just kicked off, right? So over the time when I worked with the different incubators, accelerators, right? So what I felt that this is something which impacts overall, not only ecosystem, your economy as well, right? If you see globally, so there are many unicorns who have changed the face of the universe, right? You name Facebook, you name Google, right? So although Pakistan is far behind that milestone that we are still have to wait for a unicorn, Pakistani unicorn, right? But that was something that inspired me a lot, right? One thing. Second thing, it was something which was like a platform where I can share my knowledge, share my experience with the younger breeds, right? That was something actually I was more inclined toward, that I can pass on my knowledge, my experience to the next generation so that they can benefit from it. Otherwise, in most of the disciplines, you just stick into your offices, or you just uh, achieve your own KPIs and goals daily life. But this is something where you're giving back to the community as well. That
Yeah,
was something which inspired me.
that is appropriate thing. The next question is a very appropriate one and a very relevant one that most of the people would like to know. Like from 2008 to 2024, it's been 16 years that you have been just a part of it, right? So that is a huge time, and that is a time period you might have seen a lot of ups and downs. That is a time you might have seen like the surroundings growing, because in 2008, I think even the town that we are just sitting right now and just talking about it, we were just lagging behind a lot too much. And we have seen a lot of recent developments, maybe in just the recent 4, 5, or 6 years. But from 2008 to 2024, where do we stand as a startup ecosystem? And how you just summarize the whole difference of all these 16 years, I would say. 16 years is a huge time, and you might have seen, a lot of things coming in and out, So where do you feel like we are standing as a startup ecosystem? And still, because being even in 2024, I feel like there's a huge gap. I mean, like people still even don't even, know about the startups, the startup ecosystem, the entrepreneurial elements. So all those stuff, all those things, even the business elements, they're just not sure of, right? So there is a huge lag still in 2024, but you have seen the whole journey of the last 16 years. So I would like to know about it. Like, what do you feel about it? Where do we currently stand, and how we have evolved, or whether we have evolved or not? That is the point.
I think very well phrased question, I would say, right? If I compare 2024 with 2008, so I think as an ecosystem, we are growing and we are getting much needed support from different stakeholders. So in terms of evolving, yes, our ecosystem is evolving, right? The challenges, they are still here, they exist, right? If I talk about 2008, when we started from Islamabad, right? It took almost 8 to 10 years, even our most urban vicinities like Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, it almost took 8 to 10 years to basically to develop an ecosystem, to develop a mindset into the young generation, that what is startup, how they work actually, right? So, but I think gradually it's becoming a buzzword nowadays, right? But there are some like confusion as well. You were referring to the Faisalabad, that there was no ecosystem in past, but now gradually people are basically inclined toward that. So it takes time to take a flight, right? But people are mixing businesses, conventional businesses, and the startup ecosystem, right? And so that's I think we need to educate more at grassroots level to our youth, to the business community, so that they become familiar that what landscape changes are happening in global context, what needs to be adopted in our local context, right? So if I say, I mentioned that it's growing actually. If you see, government has taken many initiatives. When we started in 2008, there was only 2 incubators, I can count, right? But now we have more than 36 incubators, right? And out of those, I will say half of them, 50% of them are basically backed by government. And government, Ministry of IT has taken that initiative. Then HEC, Higher Education Commission, they have made it compulsory for the universities to have their business incubation center. So at least they are putting steps towards it, right direction, right? They are creating that opportunities or enabling environment for the startups. They are providing those resources which were lacking in 2008, right? Now the young generation have access to the more knowledge, more education, more mentorship opportunities, more coaching opportunities, and last but not the least, access to the investments and finances, right? That's the one thing. If you see in the past 5 years, Pakistan has been on the up curve, right? Previously, when 2008, there was no concept of like investment. Most of them, the startups who basically shifted, they were either a final year project or they were working on bootstrapping model, right?
Yeah. But still, having done so much, I still feel like there are so many challenges do exist.
There are.
I'm wondering about the fact, like in 2008, I think there is a bulk of challenges back then, right?
Yeah, true, so true. So it was a nightmare back in 2008. So at that moment, people were not basically taking it as a career path or their professional path, right? But now at least young youth, they're thinking it as a professional path as well. So that's a major mindset shift. And definitely there are challenges still there, right? Political challenges, economical challenges, business enabling environment challenges. Then definitely we have very small access to funding and financing as we are still growing. If you see the number, last year we had 37 deals. Startup have raised 37 investment. So it's growing, and there are many successes, many failures into this ecosystem. But if we really want to see that where we will be in 2030, then I think we need to work with next generation. If I say that we need to work from school level, from collegiate level, so that they have proper curriculum into their disciplines, they learn about businesses, they learn about startups, that how they works, then it will be a success for Pakistan. Without that, I think it will be difficult. Currently, the situation of Pakistan, it's a uphill task to basically. But I think if startups comes forward and they inject some revenue and into the economy, they create some job opportunities for the youth. I think that will be the only way forward for the Pakistani startup ecosystem and the Pakistani economy in general as well.
Yeah, you have seen the whole journey of the things. You have seen the whole journey of the co-founders around you. You have seen the whole journey of the conventional business even in the last 16 years.
Yeah.
Let's start the conversation probably a bit more from the very grassroots level. Right. If I ask you to define to our audience, what is the difference between the startup, a conventional business, and entrepreneurship? Yeah. I think that is where a lot of people mess it up. बहुत से लोगों को शायद ये क्लैरिटी ही नहीं है कि स्टार्टअप एंड कन्वेंशनल बिजनेसेस और एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप में क्या डिफरेंस है, so that they cannot segment that up. Ultimately they all feel like whether it's all three in one or whether they are all three separated things. So I would like to ask you if you can just differentiate them all together so that people would know more about it, the people would talk more conveniently about it, and think it off that startup is not age limited. I've seen in the recent times that a startup is considered to be initiated or originated from somebody who's just probably 22 years old, 24 years old, 26 years old. And the people who have just grown old in the recent days, they feel like they're now just out of this game, right?
Right.
That is something that I just felt it out, that most of the people feel like if you haven't, if you haven't started up at below 30, it means that you are just not starting it up after 30, right, in the business.
Right.
So I would summarize the question in a way, if you can just cut short, what is the difference between the startup, conventional business, and entrepreneurship, so that people can know about it. This is how they can be separated together.
Right. So if I explain in a simple way, then I think the major difference between startup and conventional business would be that startup has technology part integrated into their either business or in their operations, right? Plus they're scalable, right? They're not limited to any particular region, particular area, right? So, and conventional businesses, they are basically being operated based upon the principle of books, right? So startup or something, they are the you can say the creature who basically don't follow rules by book, right? They take advantage of the technology, they take advantage of the untapped market, right? This is something which gives additional leverage or the advantage to the startup. So that's a primary difference if we say, right? And entrepreneurship, basically, if you talk about that, it's a discipline actually that guides a startup to basically how to develop a great business model, business model itself has different 7 to 8 foundations, right? They have to look into that whether they're aligned, their goals, their values are aligned with that or not, right? So it's a kind of Bible for them, entrepreneurship, right? Which helps them to steer their journey, right? So even if you go to the universities and you attain some degree, right? It gives you some sort of direction that this will be the career path, right? So entrepreneurship is basically a knowledge database, a knowledge center which basically guides entrepreneurs that how to operate, how to run a venture actually in a modern world, in a modern days, in a modern economies. So that's the part.
And what do you say about like startups are linked with the age, or I mean, because that is a myth that is just.
I think this
developing
is a
these days.
myth you mentioned,
Yeah.
already mentioned. This is a myth actually. So it's not about age, right? It's not about age. It's about more sort of problems.
Adapting yourself with the
Problems,
yeah.
right? I can quote like many founders. Take a global. We have many examples in the global arena. There are many founders who basically started their journey after 40s. Right? So it's not something you can say only linked with early age youth, that they are the only people who startups, right? But the only thing that differentiates, and I think this misconception, I should say, this conception is basically created due to certain factors, right? Basically, the early age youth or the young generation, they are more they have the more risk appetite, right? And as you grown up and you have some responsibilities, you have to look your own social status and quota. So they become more afraid. They don't make those choices which a 20-year-old or 30-year-old young blood can do. Like they can take risk. They can, if they fall, they can like rise again and they can start something. So that's why people usually assume that it's a like cup of youth, right? It's not the a settled person's cup, or it's not a forte for the professionals, right?
Yeah, so the myth is somewhat linked to the reality as well, because
Yeah.
as we just grow older,
so we grow older, we become fearful of the failures actually,
Yeah.
right? But if
because we have a limited time, we
Yeah.
already see it out. Like now, we have just spent a reasonable time in our life already.
just to give you an example, when I go to the universities and different campuses, and when I interact with the first or the second semester students, and I ask this question that how many of you dreams of starting your own startup, right? So I see around 80% of the hands raised up, right?
Yeah.
And when I interact with the last semester students, the ratio changes to the 20%.
Because
So-
they're already attached with the risk factor. They have already spent
This
3 more
factor,
years of their
they
life.
have been like pushed toward a path which basically our education system is basically very conventional and outdated, which basically guides them that this is the path. Don't talk about other things and other noises.
Furthermore,
they restrict them, their creativity, their innovation, their grit, right? So these are the multiple factors basically which are creating hindrance.
Furthermore, I feel like they have been fed with that sort of an information that they have already spent 3 more years in their life. So now they just
don't have time.
They don't have time to get the money and all that stuff. One important thing that most of the people feel like, being the students, as you just talked about, like you just interact with the undergrads and maybe the postgrads as well. But being the students, there is always a question like that whether should I do a job for a couple of years, or whether should I do a job for around 5 years, and then I just think it of starting it up, because that will give me some sort of an exposure, that will give me some sort of a knowledge, that will give me some sort of the coaching manual, you would say, the instructions. I would be practicing it all together. So what do you say, like whether doing a job at first before starting it up is a better choice, or right after the graduation you can just start up?
Okay. So there is not a set norms or rules for that, right?
Yeah.
You see many successful entrepreneurs or the founders, they are dropouts, right? They even didn't complete their degree as well, right? So it's all on the person, right? On the person who is basically choosing it as a path, right? Somewhat, I feel that it's good that you go into the real world, you experience things, you learn some knowledge, and then choose this path, right? You have some choices, you have some direction as well, right? But if you are going right after graduation or before graduation, then it's a leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
So you choose that path based upon your own faith. This is something I can achieve, and that's why most of the people being in the past founders has been called crazy people, and this sort of they're thinking rebels, right? Yeah. This is very normal terminology being used because they disobey the society, they disobey the rules and regulations, right? So it's all Depends. There are many successes who basically came after spending few years into their career. They learned about the different aspect of their career, and they found some gaps, some problems into that. Then they thought, why not? We should initiate that, right?
But if you compare the success rate of both of these
Yeah.
things, like both the cases, like one case is that like if somebody does the graduation and does a job for around 4 years or 3 years or maybe a couple of years, but he always has a startup in his mind.
Yeah.
And the other person just starts up all of a sudden, like right after being graduated.
Yeah.
So if you compare the success rates of both these cases together, where do you feel like doing a job, a person who has done a job is a better one, or a person who just went out to a business right away with his probably a dream sort of a thing right away could have been a better one?
So
Who's
before
getting
we
more beneficial?
go deep down into these two scenarios, like I will just give you an example that only 20% of the startup succeeds, right? In a
I think even 20% is.
I'm very optimistic about it, right?
Yeah,
Right?
I think it's optimistic number.
Yeah. So global scenario, if you see 20%, I'm just very optimistic. Otherwise, the numbers are very low, right? But when you talk about two things, that if someone comes from right after their graduation or midway of their graduation, right? And the second scenario is they have spent some time in industry, they have learned few trades, and then they join. So if you compare these success ratios, I will go for the later part. That if you spend some time, right, you learn some skill set, right? Our universities are not training or educating our youth in a way that they can basically stand alone. I can give you many examples. There are doctors, they are not even good at communication, right? So as an entrepreneur, your first skill set or your first thing, it should be communication, right? Basically, you have to interact with your investors, with your customers, with your teams, a lot of stakeholders, right? If you're not a good communicators, then I think you're not in the right path, right? In the right path. So these type of traits, I think, comes or can be developed, right? If you have chosen some career path, then you build those traits into yourself, come up with some knowledge base as well about those. Then I think success ratio will be much higher than of those who basically just start off there. They start as a luxury, as a like they don't have any career or job, so they say, why not, let's try the startup, right? So that's something I think that's why our failure rate is very high, because they are not mature, they are not clear what they are going to do, they are not experienced, right? If someone is claiming that I am developing an IoT device for the agriculture sector, but they are not even went into the field, they haven't interacted with the customers, their farmers, right? And they are just dreaming out that we are engineer and we will develop this device, this will be successful. So this is something I think it will be great if they spend some time in their career path, their industry, they learn about them, then they start their entrepreneurial journey. That will be great. Success ratio will be much higher than those.
In your recent experiences, in your recent career, you have seen a lot of co-founders coming in and out, right? I want to know about it. Like, what are the few main challenges, even in the current time, the co-founders face right away? Like going into the market, that is the first, maybe probably 3 top of the line, challenges that they face. So what are these? What are those? Like,
so first thing I already mentioned, it's about communication, right? They are not communication with their customers, communication with their stakeholders, different. They are not able to present in a better way, right?
But that is some sort of their internal skill, I would say. That is something that I would definitely ask you.
I agree, but it's the prerequisite of startup. Right?
Yeah.
If you are not able to, like in general, we say that if you are able to communicate your idea to a 5-year-old child, then this is gonna be hit, right? If they are failed to communicate to the community, to the ecosystem, to the investors, it means how wild that idea is, how like reasonable or the relevant idea. But if they cannot communicate, they're not gonna be successful. The communication is the first element. They need to work on that. So that how simple and easiest way they can communicate their idea, right? They should, in short way, in crisp way. Nowadays we say that we conduct a founder institute hot seat round, right? So we have shrinked our pitch to the 1 minute 30 second, right? So elevator pitch. right? So if you cannot communicate your idea in 30 seconds to any investors or the business community, so it means you're going to fail. You're not going to get another chance for that, right? So communication is first, right? Number two, basically most of the founders or the youth, they just jumps in and start their startup based upon some idea, but they don't see the long-term vision and goals, right? That's something which is actually lacking. They don't have knowledge. As a founder, they have to wear multiple hats, right? So, but once they just jumped on, they said, "Oh, we have seen this. This is successful, either globally or in our neighbors, and this will be successful in Pakistan as well, or in our region as well, right?" So they just jumped in. They don't have any groundwork. They don't do any research, any survey. They don't do the need assessment of that idea, right? They just love their solution, their idea. That's it. Actual problem might be 360-degree different, right? And that's why they become fail. They are not adaptable. They are late in pivoting their ideas, right? That's another factor for them.
It's something like that. They just got.
They just think that we have thought it off in
then let's go for
library,
it.
in a cafe with the friends, and this will be successful. Realities, actual research, right? That's another factor. Last but not the least, I think you asked top three reasons for that. The misconception that every startup comes into incubator or any accelerator, any ecosystem, they comes with a mindset that we go into the startup ecosystem and all the facilitator or the enabler, they will provide us some chunk of money. So they come for the low-hanging fruit, right? They don't see that we have to deliver something. We have to put something solid on the table so that we win the trust of the investors or the financial institute, and they invest into our idea. So that's the basically misconception that hindering or challenge, you can say, that hindering the overall ecosystem growth, right? We have seen many like great ideas, right? But they always waited for some money to kick off.
Yeah, I always back this up. This is a different topic altogether. Like, I've seen a lot of startups coming even to me, and talking to them for 5 minutes, I realize it out. Like, their goal is to just raise money.
Raise money.
Their goal is just not to make money out of it. If they just convert the goal to make money, I think they can just go far beyond that. Because most of the co-founders these days, they feel like, getting a VC deal is actually the thing that they all need. But actually the real game begins after that, Like if you get, a VC on your business, that's good. But how you need to make money in your business, that is where I think that is going to define a rule. Because VCs have linked a lot with the revenue. It doesn't matter like how much loss you are making it or not. But if you're not making your system, if you're not making your business profitable up to a certain extent, and not combining it with a vision that where you want to reach, then I think it's going to mess up altogether, right? And that is probably the mindset that is developing in the co-founders these days. They are just probably, too much focused about the VCs. They're not too much focused about the profitability of the business, right?
Yeah, I think they need to realize that VCs, they have they're dealing hundreds of startup on daily basis, right? They can, as you said, that you can judge in 5 minutes, right? They can judge in a minute, right? Whether it's gonna work or not. And the second thing, startups need to work on their financial acumen, right? That's very, very much lacking. They just see that this much will be cost of our product or services, and this much will be revenue. There are a lot behind that, right? So they don't bring into that calculation, and that's where basically most of the angel investors, VC, they exploit the startups, right? And later on, we find out that startup has given all the rights and all the equities to the.
Yeah, I'm going deeper down into some of the harsh questions in this case. Is that I've seen a lot of great ideas in the surroundings in the recent times, to be honest. I feel like there had been so much potential in the co-founders. The ideas were so good. Even those same ideas in our neighboring countries or even, our far beyond countries, they are very successful. Just because they got the initial steps, settled down perfectly. What is going wrong in Pakistan startup ecosystem? I don't think so. Like it's going to be, the problem of co-founders every time. I don't think so, because sometimes the co-founders, they really come motivated. They really have the vision on board. They really know how to make money. But there is always some sort of an initial support that can be in the form of mentorship, that can be in the form of initial monetary resources, a monetary injection.
Yeah.
That can be in the form of initial guidance that can really take them into from one step to another and another and another. What we have seen in the recent countries, what we have seen in the other countries that have been just happening around over there. What is going wrong in the Pakistan, in our society? I don't feel like it is always the co-founders that are at the fault. I feel like there is a lack of assistance for them. What's your take on that?
So I think co-founder and the team is definitely a one key factor for their failure, right? But there are certain other major elements which basically contributing towards lesser growth of our ecosystem.
We always talk about, sorry for cutting you out, but expanding my question a bit more. We always talk about like Amazon started from a garage, and all other sort of big businesses, they started from a garage. But we don't, throw a light on the key elements that made them successful. That assisting environments, that assisting cultures, that really understood the value of a startup, that really had given that sort of an importance, to that business idea, and then just took it to another step, right? So, but we always talk about like it has started from the garage and the co-founder had taken it from this to this, and we talk about Bill Gates, we talk about Steve Jobs. It's not throwing light to the other elements. So, is there something going wrong in our society, in our culture as well? Like that is something that we can do better to motivate the co-founders a bit more, to get the yield out of them, to make them that sort of healthy in the mindset that they will just go big.
Yeah. So just to answer your question, you I think rightly pointed about Amazon or other success story who started from their garage. So one thing in your own question is reflective that they didn't wait it for some investments or something, right? They just started developing their products, their services, right? The challenge in Pakistani ecosystem, as I mentioned earlier, these young breeds, they just come with a mindset that if we will get money, we will start a business, right? They are creating a wall for themselves.
But can't we mentor them up?
We have available resources, right? Government is taking initiative, private incubators and accelerators, then even development agencies, they are conducting different hackathons, challenges, innovation challenges, right? The only thing that is lacking, another aspect which I would like to highlight, that most of our startups or the founders, they just copy paste those ideas and try to implement that. There's no innovation or creativity with the local context, right? So when you take some idea and try to implement in our context, Pakistani economy context, so it's already like on the slate that it's going to be fail, right? So they don't think themselves, right? They just but the secret recipe basically which makes them successful. You mentioned about Amazon, they started as a book library, and like now they are giants, right? So they don't have vision that where they're gonna be. If you ask, like I have interacted many startups, right? They come up with a good idea, they say we will execute that, this much revenue will be generated. But when I ask them a question, what will be next? Right? You have reached a certain point, right? What will be a long-term takeaway from this, right? And they're clueless, right? And their ambitions are very low. If I talk about Silicon Valley, if any startups has created some product or services, right? They go for the investment, they ask 100 million, 500 million, 100,000, right? But our startup, if you see, I think that's not startup only, that's ecosystem as well. They don't have that much appetite, right? They just think of $100,000 max, $200,000 max, and their vision will be like in 5 years we will be raising $1 million max. Right? That's the difference actually, basically, which is not putting our startup on the global arena, right? And the global VCs, although the global investment token size is shrinking, so they are looking towards the developing countries that there might be some good ideas. Pakistan is, I think, sixth most populated country, right, in the world, and it's a great market size, right? But our own people are not able to tap it. But you see Cream, you see Yango, these are those
Yeah.
startups who basically came from outside, right?
Yeah.
And they captured the market.
Yeah. It's the same market, but they just
Same
captured it
market,
well.
yeah. Basically, they came with complete research, with the tested models. They tested in the different regions, and then they came into Pakistan.
But you're talking about the whole subcontinent mindset. I understand, being below par in the mindset with the vision. I understand that fact out. But what wrong that we are doing that our neighbor country is just doing too good? Because there are, even the count in the unicorns is huge. The difference in the unicorns is huge. The difference in the startups, even a good scale startup, that is huge. So what they are doing right and what we are just doing wrong, because we feel like, that's what I'm just saying and asking with you. It's not always the co-founders. I feel like we are just not probably giving them enough value, because probably we judge them too early and then put a label on their forehead like you cannot go ahead because you lack this skill. So there is something, because I'm much familiar, I've studied a lot in this case, that our subcontinent mindset is same, but there is something that our neighboring countries are doing too well, and there is something that we are just not doing too well, and we are just not understanding it too well, and that is probably just creating a problem for us. So is there any top of the line stuff, or is there any set of values that we are just not doing good to?
So let me give you from another lens, right? So far we were just talking about from startup perspective, right? Now comes toward the other side, right? So if we compare with our neighboring nations, right, we have been like working on it. I said our trajectory on the growth, but we haven't provided yet the enabling environment for the startups, right? That's the one reason, right? Our only one department cannot like fulfill all the demands or the gaps, right? Our business community need to step forward, right? They're very reluctant. Their risk appetite is very low. Like they are more inclined toward the conventional businesses and conventional investments, right? That's the one reason, right? We have lesser access to the mentoring, coaching, and investment facility. That's another reason, right? Third is regulatory, right? If some startup has to do some like registration, they have to do a lot of things with the SECP, right? If they have to go for the patents, something, there's so exhausting list of requirements that when they start filling that form, they get, basically they're not domain savvy. Like IP is not their forte, right? They might be good in technical. So our government need, our regulatory bodies need to devise a framework which should facilitate these startups in getting some sort of certification, some registration, some attestation, right? That's the one challenge. Plus, it's not easily available. There's no online platform which can guide startups that these are the requirements. If I am starting in a like tech industry, what type of licensing I require, right? What type of certifications I require? There's no single platform which is actually correct. If I have to get some service patent or copyright, there's no central repository which can guide a startup. That's how you can do that. Even for a career, I have spent like more than 18 years in my career, professional career. It's still a nightmare for me to file a tax return, right? So you can imagine how difficult it is for a startup. So their regulatory side, their enabling environment side, which need to be rectified. Some measures need to be taken, right? Even if you go into the UK, right? If you have some idea, right? And you go to some financial institute, they will just assign a resource to you and they will evaluate your idea based upon neighboring markets and countries, and right? And they will immediately, if your idea has been like selected, they will immediately release the funds to you. There will be no guarantor. There will be no background that how much money you have earned, or there will be no check, right? But in Pakistan, even if you go for the right loan as well, so you have to provide references, you have to submit some security, affidavits. So this is something I think.
बस पाउंड के अंगूठे लगवाने वाले रहते हैं, बाकी उसके
अलावा exactly. Even कि I am just telling you that हमारा past में एक startup, they went for the registration, company registration, right? But उसमें they went for the like non-conventional approach. एक lawyer के पास चले गए, and lawyer ने वो बैठ के company registrar से they got their company listed, right? But when shareholders and the investment was coming to their startup, so there was so many complications. They even didn't file a Form 45. I'm not sure what is Form 45.
Yeah.
So that is something which is like liar was
Yeah.
unaware of it,
Yeah.
right? And how come a startup can be aware of it?
Yeah.
That was mandatory part of their.
I know the difference. I know a bit of a shareholding of
Yeah,
one shareholder to
So
another.
it's so complicated processes that basically, and if you see currently Pakistani undocumented economy is much larger than documented economy. That's the primary reason that people try to avoid these regulatory things and the frames.
Are we doing the steps to cover up these things?
I think government claims every time, but political instability is a major factor behind that, right? Every government's like even they complete their tenure, they take some reforms. Next government comes and they do what suits them actually, right?
Yeah, because
there's no uniformity in basically policies, regulations. That needs to be like Pakistan. If they want, if it is surprising that SACP hasn't yet approved the crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Globally, it's a like go-to strategy for the startups that if they don't raise investment from the institutional or non-institutional investors, then they go for the crowdfunding. But in Pakistan, it's not yet allowed.
Yeah.
So you can compare that these are the reason actually. In India, if I just give you a quote, they have started many initiatives. They have like 36 government supported incubators, right? And what they do actually, like if 20 startups has been enrolled in an incubator, right? They created an endowment fund, right? And they do the first investment into the top 5 startups. So, or that is zero equity. So this is something I think Pakistan need to work on, right? The Ministry of IT is already taking initiative to create a Pakistan Startup Fund, but what will be the modalities and the functionalities of that is not yet clear, right? But if you see our neighbors, they are offering 0% equity-based investment into the startups. They have created an enrollment fund which is being backed by different business leaders like Tata, Ambani Group, right? They even with their actors, they have invested in so many startups. So this is something I think they have worked on. They have drafted some policies, some benefits, and whosoever contribute into that endowment fund, they get the tax rebates. So this is ultimate benefit for those investors as well. That if this money is being invested into the startup, which is like high risk domain, then they will get tax rebates in return. So these are type of measures I think Pakistan government need to make so that our ecosystem could flourish and we can see new startups who can compete with the neighboring markets and the global markets.
But let's talk about some of the real factors. Some talk about the real stories. Some talk about, to enable our co-founders in a way, like that is something that they should do in their startups. That is something that they should not do. That is something that they should highly avoid, to be more successful. So if I ask you, if you put on table a one top success story that you have seen in your surroundings, like that is a success story that you felt like, in Pakistan, you felt it out, or probably you have been very close to it, and you feel like, that is something good to narrate on.
Right. So I think I will our recent startup जो कि आजकल न्यूज़ में भी रहा है, ठीक है? I have been like known them from past 5-6 years for a good time, right? So I was working with Thai, the Indian entrepreneur by that time, right? They joined Pakistan Startup Cup, which is Pakistan's largest business idea competition, right? So I know them since that time, right? So Sehat Kahani is a startup name, right? They have recently raised a 2.7 million seed round, right? So if you see their journey and what they have done right and what they avoided or what they basically overcome challenges. अगर मैं उनकी करूँ, this is basically health tech startup, right? Online आपका OPD services को offer करता है, right? So when they started actually, and none of the founder have any technology background. That's surprising, right? Dr. Sara Qureshi, then Nadia Faruqi, they are all from like medical background, right? So, but they transformed them into a like technology-enabled health provider, right? So, इनका जब journey start हुआ था, you won't believe when I first heard their pitch, right, at Pakistan Startup Cup. So they were kind of final year project. It was more like a final year project, not a startup, right? But they evolved themselves. Okay? And what they did right, actually, they brought the right people
in their team.
right? That is the one essence कि अगर आपकी combination अच्छा हो ना तो बहुत बहुत success करे. अभी क्या हो रहा है कि startups what they do usually कि a group of friends they start a journey, they are all from the same background, right? They did either their MBA, BBA or any technical degree, right? But they don't realize that
We need diversity in the team.
Yeah, there should be diversity. The people from different walks of life. So what they did actually, they brought the right people. They brought technology experts. They brought commercialization experts. Partnership experts. So team building was one of the like crucial factor. Which
and that is something that most of the people underrate. You know, I mean,
they basically undermine it because of they think that this is our idea. It might be stealed away. ठीक है, चोरी हो जाएगा. So we should like cook under
in a specific area.
Few people should be aware of it. Rest of them should not be open to that. But I think it's not about the idea. It's about the execution.
Because they feel like that what they have just thought, maybe the rest of the 8 billion people haven't thought about it. But that is where they're wrong.
Which is wrong.
Because a lot of people, a lot of different mindset people, a lot of different diverse people, they have already thought about it, but probably they failed in the execution. And that is where they are also following the same path, right?
Exactly.
You know, I mean, like they feel like what they know, rest of the people don't know.
Yeah.
And then when the execution comes up, that is where they fall apart. Right?
True.
But they don't know, like that is the story of, you know, a lot of segments of 8 billion people, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So team building is one part. Another part is basically which most of the startup miss is collaborations and networking. These things helps a lot in a long way, right? So what they did basically, they partnered and collaborated with all leading hospitals, doctors, right, who came on their panel, online panel. That was a secondary source of revenue for those doctors and hospitals. They signed MOUs with the insurance companies, right, government institutes, right. They offered very subsidized packages to the companies that if you opt for our medical services, then we will be giving you like 50% discount. Right? So partnerships and collaborations were integral. Most of the startup, they just think that we will create our own universe. It's not possible. You need some like-minded people, like-minded entities to join your journey so that your success is their success, right? Ultimately, you contribute to each other's success. So partnerships and collaboration is another thing which Syed Kahani did very well, right? They have more than 1,700 doctors on their panel, right? And they're all top-notch doctors, right? And third, the most important, which helps startups in grooming, they participated in each and every competition in local and international arena, right? Whether it's in Turkey, whether it's in Karachi, whether it's in Sakkar, they participated in each and every competition, which helped them to basically broaden their vision, to groom themselves, to present in a better way, right? And to get a feedback and from judges, from mentors, from coaches, right? And if you see, you go on their website, if you see, they have almost participated over 100 business incubation competitions and idea competitions, and they have won more than 30. So that was a journey basically which helped them in the long run.
Yeah.
Right?
Considering your last point, I think that is also a point that most of the people undermention or ignore. And also like one important factor that probably just comes into a startup life is the ego, you know. They feel like they've participated in 3 or 4 events and they are now just making a reasonable enough money. So they don't, you know, bother going to the rest of the events that probably just don't meet their merits. Right?
True.
So, but that is where they are missing out a trick.
Yeah.
is that like they are missing out a trick of meeting 1,000 people, maybe 5,000 people that can talk differently, that can put a different point of view regarding their product, and that is where that they can just learn from them, make themselves more enabled, make
It's
themselves.
not only their own learning, but it's like a way to basically assess their own startup as well. That where we stand actually.
Yeah.
But basically this market or this ecosystem is very competitive, right? So if you're not following or updating or pivoting as per changing dynamics of the ecosystem, it means in a year or two you will be off the shelf, right?
Wiped out.
So that's help you basically not only compete with the best or the new lot, but also upgrade your own startup and idea. That was the third thing. And fourth, last and most important, which basically they did, they never relied on any investments in early days, right? Until they made a break-even point. What they were doing, they were going into the market. They were basically facilitating, and COVID helped them in this cause actually. They were talking to the doctors, right? And they were saying that we are lessening your burden. You are meeting like 50 people in person, but in the same time, if you join hybrid over the Zoom, so you can in an hour you can like entertain 60 people, 70 people, right? 2 minute max. You will just see their reports, advise them some medicine. So doctor, they felt it easy.
Yeah.
They felt it flexible, particularly in those days when COVID, there was so much stress, there was so much thing happened, mobility was another issue. So they cashed on it. So those people who could not travel or who could not afford travel, right, from remote areas, from Sindh, from Balochistan, right, and if some specialist is sitting in Karachi or Lahore, right, heart specialist, so they made a value for the doctor and for the customers. This is something actually which helped them to generate revenue.
Yeah.
So that's why they never relied on any investment. Definitely, they participated in different competitions. They won some money, they some prizes, some grants, which has been like awarded from different donor agencies, right? But never ever went for the investment until they made a break-even point, right? So they mostly relied on the revenue. They were as quick as possible to go into the market. That's where our startup becomes like make a mistake. They take so much time to go into the market that they work on perfection. They wait for the investments. They wait for the some funding, right? But they don't think that we should go into the market and generate some revenue. That is more sustainable way for any startup, for any businesses, right? Instead of relying on someone else's money, right? So that's the fourth thing, crucial thing, which basically contributed to Seyyed Kahani's success. Although it was a very long journey for them, 6 years, right? After 6 years, they went for a first round and they raised 2.7 million, right? But these were the four factors which basically glued them, stick them together, and make a great success for Pakistan in these days.
And let's talk about the failures now. I mean, like we see, like failures are huge.
Yeah.
Failures are a part of it, big time. A lot of the startups come, a lot of co-founders come with a vision. A lot of co-founders come as a night dream or a thing like they can just hit big, and then they just fall apart very all of a sudden, you could say. So let's talk about one of the biggest failure you felt in your surrounding. You felt like, or probably that has hit you as well. You felt like, oh, ye waqi ye galat kar gaye hai, that is where the things went wrong. That is something that the co-founders will get, enough information regarding it. Like this is something that they shouldn't do. On table.
So I won't say a complete failure, right? But just to give you the example from the local ecosystem, right? I won't quote national level or international level, just local ecosystem, right? So there is a startup, I won't name them, okay? But there is a startup who is into edutainment industry, right? Education plus entertainment, right? Edutainment industry. So the problem is they have great idea, right? They have worked in their past on developing great content, right? Which I think currently in Pakistani market no one is offering, right? But their failure is that they are only stuck and waiting for the investments, right? so that they can develop their own OTT platform and launch a subscription-based model for the parents and for the kids, right, to educate them. But many of mentors, coaches, they try to tell them that you need to launch as soon as possible so that you build some customer base which you can reflect to your investors or the financial institutes so that they can inject some funds into your startup and then you can grow, right? So the main reason which I see behind their failure is you can say lack of flexibility, right? Rigidness. They are not adaptive. These are the reasons basically which are contributing to. They have great team, they have great content, they are very skillful, right? But they are only relying on. Even though but now all the platform, if I say YouTube, any Amazon, Netflix, they are paying you based upon viewership, right? They're not even opting for that path as well. They're just waiting. We will launch a OTT platform, right? And that would only be possible when they have hundred of thousands in their account, and then they will be there. So they are wasting their time, right? By not being flexible, adaptive, and pivoting their model, right? They should not only stick to OTT. They should go for the online platform which are available for them, right? So this is one reason which is basically pushing them towards failure if they do not. So that's one story which I actually closely in my recent times, I closely been working with them and observing them, and pity they are not doing what they have been told by their coaches, by their mentors, and by their facilitators. So startups need to be flexible, adaptive, and definitely pivoting at a quick pace. Otherwise, they are outdated. There will be someone else who will be capturing the market.
Yeah. Considering the change in the recent years, considering where we are right now, what do you think, like, where we will be in the next 5 years, like being the startup ecosystem, considering the mindset of our co-founders, mindset of our founders, our directors, our national level challenges, our environmental challenges, cultural challenges. Where do you feel like we are going to be in the next 5 years, being the startup ecosystem?
Right. I think we are on, like I can say, we are on growth trajectory, but there are still challenges that need to be addressed, right? And without addressing those challenges, we won't be able to, you can say, compare ourselves with the developing economies who heavily rely on their startup ecosystem. Right? If you compare Singapore, Malaysia, right? If you see their numbers, they are very surprising. Although they are very small populated areas and geographical.
They don't have a big market,
but
we have a huge market.
Yeah, we have huge market, but we are not capitalizing on that, right? So one of the most important thing which I think need to be reformed or reworked on that we need to develop a system at grassroots level. When our kids basically they come into our education system, right? They have been programmed in a way that they
need to get a job.
They just think in a unidirectional way.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't challenge themselves. They don't they kill creativity actually.
Yeah.
Right? If you go in a classroom of first standard and you ask kids that what you want to be in your future, someone will say, I will be doctor, I will be engineer, I will be this. They are all professions. No one say I will be businessman, and hardly 1%. I will be an entrepreneur, I will be a startup. So we need like change at grassroots level. Either we need to add some education material into that. We do some like boot camps, similar nature of summer camps, right? We can have boot camps of 3 months where kids could be trained and they can shadow the successful entrepreneurs and they can learn from them. And we can have a small kids competition as well. Okay, what's their idea, what they want to build, and that could be something which can be given to the elders and they can work on those kids' ideas, right? basically the skies are limit for the kids. They just imagine I want a rocket in the sea, for example, right? This is something like multi-medium transportation, right? So this is something which looks crazy, but I think grassroots level is one thing. If we want to grow and if we want to go there where developed economies are already, right? Number one. Number two, I think we need to work on some enabling environment, particularly, which is like gradually coming in shape, but it's need to be like uh, more aggressively to be reshaped and reformed, right? उसमें बहुत बड़ा gap ये होता है, as we were discussing in the break, that as soon as government changes or political instability occurs, all the good work being done in the past goes to waste, right? So this is something I think we need to develop a uniform policies or some sort of action plan, right? So that whosoever comes or whosoever changes the offices, these things should be in place, right? Which should be supportive for the startup ecosystem. Ultimately, economy will grow, right? If you see the challenges, I was talking to some businesses as well. Last जब हमारी ये political instability आई है, तो even LCs were not opening. We're not able to import the raw material.
That was a huge problem in the recent days.
So you see that political instability ultimately
hitting us too
affects,
bad.
right? Your businesses, your startup ecosystem.
Definitely.
That needs to be
addressed as soon as
yeah,
possible.
we should have some emergency action plan for that. That whatever happens, these things should be aligned, right, and supportive for the startup, right?
Well, the challenges are too much, and I think creating a balance among the challenges and meeting them up, it will never end. And there are still tons of questions that are going in my mind that we would like to address. But yeah, let's keep few of them for the later. A very short brief, just for the audience and just for the right people to know what the NIC is doing. Because I think NIC is a very fine platform for them, to utilize that to the most extent to make their startup successful in many different dimensions. I mean, like, those are the few quick factors that I would like you to highlight. Like, these are the few quick factors that can really facilitate their startup. And I think NIC comes up with a lot of solutions that the startups face at the early stages, to be very honest. But the people are still unfamiliar. बहुत से लोगों को नहीं पता. बहुत से लोग इससे familiar नहीं है. Awareness की कमी है. And that is where I want you to throw light at it.
So I will just start with a joke. So on NIC platform, right, my number is mentioned on all the social media pages, right? And most of the days I just receive a call and they say, did you provide the incubator for the chickens and for the... They think that National Incubation Center is incubator who basically hatch eggs and this.
Oh my God.
So you can imagine. Right? So now coming back to the topic, NIC, what it is. So NIC, National Incubation Center, is an initiative of Ministry of IT and Telecom under the flagship of Ignite, right? So far in Pakistan, there are 8 chapters. And this is Pakistan's first vertical focus, which is primarily Faisalabad is focused on agriculture and textile being Manchester of Pakistan, so you can imagine. And after that, Ignite also launched aerospace technology, a National Incubation Center in Rawalpindi. Now they are more focused toward the verticals, right? Next is their gaming arena, which is they are going to launch in Karachi. Then they are working on industrial in Sialkot. So every next coming NICs will be more vertical focused. So NIC is basically, it's a platform, enabling platform for the young entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs, which provides free of cost services that includes infrastructure. You will have a state-of-the-art co-working space with all the amenities, including internet, printing, telephone lines, technology, everything, right? Then we provide world-class education. We have been partnered with Founder Institute, right, who is the world's largest incubator, right? We are offering their curriculum. Along with that, we provide the mentorship, which is very necessary mentorship and coaching. And beyond that, I think these are the foundation for any startups, right? But beyond that, all those startups who are established or who are at next chapter of their entrepreneurial journey, we provide them access to the markets, right? We work for the network and linkages to their relevant industry so that they can grow in a larger spectrum. Last but not the least, we provide them access to funding. We are working on investor education program, and we are working on developing a local Faisalabad investment fund as well with the Faisalabad Chamber of Commerce and Industries. So soon you will be hearing that we will develop a local Faisalabad based investment fund, right?
Wonderful.
So that's the few offerings NIC is.
And I think that is a lot. Because
Yeah, it's on the take actually.
Yeah.
So, but as I was mentioning earlier in our conversation, that people still are digesting this phenomena. Actually, this is a new novel concept for this region actually, right? So people are gradually accommodating, but there are some mature startups as well in parallel, right? So ultimately, we are hoping that the steps and the offerings and the initiatives taken by NIC, right, would be like helping and supporting community at large.
Wonderful. I think that is a lot, and the people who are just not cashing it in, I think
Yeah.
they're missing out a bigger opportunity,
True.
right?
Because
I see people, struggling from all these factors, in their early stages of the startups.
Yeah.
And still, if they are just, not familiar enough and not looking around like what is available in their town and not cashing it in, I think they're missing out a big time.
I think they need to realize one thing, that even if you start a venture at your own, so a free infrastructure facility, coaching, mentoring, everything, it costs a lot.
It costs a lot. It creates a headache to the great extent.
So you will be like tension free. So I think this is something a value for startups.
Huge value. I mean, like I grew my business from the startup, to be fair, like starting it up from a very small room. And then, I know the whole journey of it. I know what technicalities, what different elements, what different challenges that are not the core part of your business. They just come up every day. Light chali gayi hai, you need a generator, you need an office boy, you need to, sweep it around. Because when I just started up the office, I just swept around myself, मैंने तो खुद झाड़ू फेर के भी, we started up. So we, both partners, we used to, shut it up as well. हमने खुद ही shutter उठाना, वो shop का, office का, and then, used to clean our furniture to sit it over. So if something is just developing that way, that is just taking your initial headache, I think that is a huge thing. So then you can just focus on the core parts.
Not only additional headache, but if you see in other way that the challenges or the difficulties you faced in your journey, they will be a mile ahead of it. Right? They won't be like thinking or worrying about these things, right? And the type of coaching and mentorship, like हमारे जितने भी coaches हैं, we have more than like 1,700 extensive network in different expertise. So the knowledge and the challenges they can just directly discuss with those experts, and based upon their advice, if they follow that, so I think the journey they will be completing in 3-5 years, that could shrink to the 1 year.
Right? Because there is always a bit of a light in the whole darkness.
Exactly.
So we are seeing the darkness way too much.
True.
And
we are just missing on that bright spot.
Yeah, that bright spot. And that bright spot, if somebody cashes it in, I think it can act as far more than a lamp, for him.
Exactly.
And then they can just grow. So that is where I would say like NIC is a very good platform to cash it on. And especially in the town where the people have, less awareness, they're struggling, they're, get so much troubles while initiating it up. So I think that is where it is facilitating a lot. Well, we are closer to wrap it up. I want to know one of the best advice that you have heard about, about career, about life, about anything from any of your surrounding. Like a friend of yours or a family member of yours who has said something so much valuable, you felt like, this is something that he has said really good.
So I think वो कहते हैं ना कि आपकी घर से ही शुरू होती है जो आपकी तरबियत होती है. So one thing which I think my parents and my grandparents, ठीक है, they used to tell us that कि हमेशा देने वाले बनो, लेने वाले न बनो. ठीक है. So this was the one thing जिसने I think reshaped my approach as well. to opting this path as a career path, right? उसमें यही था कि I was able or in a position to give back to the community, ठीक है? एंड सेकंड यार, अगर मैं प्रोफेशनल एडवाइस की बात करता हूँ, सो वन ऑफ माय senior colleague, right, is a good friend of mine right now. So once he said me that it's better to be head of chicken than tail of an elephant, right? So in early days, I was confused, what, this is not like accepting, my mind is not accepting, right? So I worked with different corporates like World Bank हो गया, USAID हो गया. So I worked with giants as well, right? But what I felt there, I was restrained in a particular domain. I was not able to learn new things, to contribute into new things, right? They were a system, I was stuck in those systems, right? My vision was limited to only that universe, right? But when I started working with entities who were directly working with communities like Thai Islamabad, I mentioned earlier, right? Then NIC's journey. So when I started working with startup ecosystem, the one best thing which I learned, and that clarified that concept that it's better to be head of a chicken than tail of an elephant, right? That with limited resources, the impact you are creating is very high. So if we see that if we are reshaping one life, only one life, which is creating, that is basically a takeaway for me in the long run, that I have contributed, which is like impactful in the long run.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that is something really insightful regarding the startup industry, and I think the startup co-founders really need to see through this information. There is still a lot to discuss about. I mean, like, we can discuss the tons of it because the startup journey is that way. You know, I mean,
Exactly.
like when you just get into it, the startup co-founders and the one who wants to run their own startups, you know, in the very near future, they'll be familiar with that journey very soon. But yeah, these are the few insights that can really help them a lot. And I think you were spot on with your answers. And hopefully we'll have another session very soon and take it ahead towards the next few, you know, questions, few topics that can really help the audience a lot. And that is the purpose of Talk That Matters, to be fair.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate all the team members of TTM as well for putting a valuable resources for our generations coming next. And I hope this become helpful for the viewers as well, who will be basically watching you and for your own journey as well.
Yeah.
And really appreciate the efforts you are putting in, and look forward for the more successes in the future.
Yeah, inshallah. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for your
so
time. So let's talk soon.